McClure from European Network and Outdoor Sports. So Mike, please tell us more about you and ENOS.
Great, thank you, Karen, so much for hosting this webinar and for moderating. It's great to be part of it. ENOS is very much a network organization whose members are extremely varied, both in sector and geographical location. We have members from Alta in the very north of Norway to southern Portugal, and from the Azores right far in the west to Romania in the east. So geographically we're really broad, but our membership as well is extremely broad, with universities, local and regional authorities, ministries of sport, international and national sports federations, local sports clubs, businesses and tourism providers. And this breadth is one of the unique things about the network, and it's why events like this are so important for us to share knowledge and share ideas across the network. We have all one thing in common, that we're involved in the development, management or promotion of outdoor sports. And by outdoor sports, we think about sports that use nature as a basis for their activities. Our draft vision is that we will have a Europe where outdoor sports and recreation are accessible for all, fostering health and well-being, nature connection and environmental responsibility. All of our members have to sign a charter that has 10 key elements, and sustainability is very much at the core of that. We are passionate about the topic of sustainability, and it's really great to see so many people now on this webinar sharing ideas and learning from each other. So it's great to be part of this. It's great to be partnered with Mid-Sweden University as well on this webinar. Mid-Sweden University is part of our sustainability working group. We have a working group from across our sector, and we work collaboratively to develop our thinking in terms of sustainability, but how we can promote that across our network. So thanks, Karen. That's it from me for now, and I'll hand back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. And I just also want to give a little bit of a background to MISTRA Sport and Outdoors and what we do. And my position within MISTRA Sport and Outdoors is that I'm the co-creation leader within this program. And basically, MISTRA Sport and Outdoors is a Swedish research and collaboration program with the aim of generating knowledge and solutions for increased sustainability in sports and outdoor recreation. And we very strongly believe that collaboration between research, organizations, authorities, and companies is the way forwards to reach our sustainability goals. And we do have a visionary goal, which is that the negative environmental impact from sport and outdoor recreation decreases, while their environmental benefits increase without losing other positive societal effects from sport and outdoor recreation. So we have a very clear focus on the environmental sustainability factors. However, we do also touch upon the other more social and economic values as well. And just very short background that this program, MISTRA Sport and Outdoors, is financed by MISTRA, which is the Swedish Foundation for Strategic Environmental Research. We have been up and running now for 4 years, and we have 4 more years, another year, so in total 8 years that we hope that we can be operate within. And as Mike said before, the host of this program is Mid-Sweden University, which basically it has 2 campuses which are located in the middle of Sweden, basically. And in this program, research and collaboration program, we are 8 universities and around 50 partnering organizations, all from sports and outdoor recreational sector in Sweden. And basically we have a few areas that we focus more on, which is transportation and mobility, land and water use, materials and equipment, event and spectators as well. And then we have also we look also into behavior and path dependencies and transformation, policy and future change. And we will be there, or we will be at Euromeet in Lecco, actually, which ENOS organize this spring. So I really look forward to I hope that I can see more of you there and we can have continue this interesting line of discussion. Yeah, but that was a short description of both ENOS and MISTRA Sport and Outdoors. And now it's time to turn our attention to the interesting presenters we have with us today. And we will hear presentations from Peter Fischer, which is a policy officer at European Commission Sports Units. We will also hear from Anders Larsson, who is an associate professor at the University of Gothenburg and also researcher in MISTRA Sport and Outdoors. Sara Berggren, project manager at the Swedish Tourist Association. We also have Johanna Felber, international communication and public relations for the Climate Protection Project in the DAB. And last but not least, Mike will come back in the end and give us a presentation as well. But we are now very happy that all of you are here with us today, and we all look forward to these interesting presentations. And with that said, let's welcome our first presenter, Peter Fischer. See, I can't hear Peter, but maybe he is here. I see a presentation. Okay, so you're muted, Peter.
Unmuting helps. Hello, everybody. Now I think.
Yes, we can hear you
as well and see me.
Yes.
And the presentation is on screen already, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then I can get going. All right. Good afternoon. So I'm not in my usual work environment, and also Zoom is not my preferred and most used online platform, but we'll manage. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here with you virtually and tell you about the way the environmental sustainability has taken an increased importance in the work of the European Union, and notably in the European Commission Sport Unit, where I'm a policy officer. And for the last 2 years or so, I've been very much dedicating most of my time on environmental sustainability in sport. And the reason for doing so is, of course, that sport is part of the problem, but also is exposed to climate change, and also is in some extent responsible for certain issues related to environmental and biodiversity issues. So the image you see here are from outdoor sports or mountain bike sports, and that is, of course, something many of us are involved in, but it's getting more difficult to do. Winter sports, for example, and if the temperature heats up even more, and these are the graphics from a WWF report commissioned or prepared in cooperation with the Ministry of Sport in France, there will be up to 22 days less of football practice possible outdoors due to the rising heat, and of course, similarly, less snow in the Alps, and therefore a lot less possibilities for practicing our favorite winter sports. Now, that is, of course, not new to you, but at the Commission, we've tried to now link the topic of sports with the European Green Deal. And we, just to recap what one of the main or the main objective is, it's a net zero greenhouse gas emissions economy EU-wide by 2050, and we have an interim target of minus 55% by the year 2030 compared to 1990. And we are, of course, not quite there yet. And in fact, the European Environmental Agency estimates that the 2030 target is likely to be missed by 7 percentage points if no further action is taken. So there's a clear need for action, and sport has to be part of the solution. It's something I think you will hear more than once from me. So that led us to address the issue of environmental sustainability in sport in the EU Work Plan for Sport, which is still running until the end of this month, next month, end of June. And a Commission expert group was created. Who's part of such an expert group? Typically, or the official members are representatives from member states. But then, of course, we need to rely on sports practitioners, and we made a call for expression of interest, and many international European sports federations applied and joined the discussion. You see some of them listed here, and of course, as this expert group was not the first to look at these issues, had also reached out to the Sports for Climate Action team and the UNFCCC Climate Secretary, and also sought guidance from the head of the European Environmental Agency. So this is just to frame and explain who the colleagues were that produced the recommendations, some of which I will present further on in this presentation. So until December 2023, we heard from lots of interesting speakers. Oftentimes they were not regular members or observers of the group, but we found them as they were active in the field. So we heard, for instance, from the Johan Cruyff Arena, which is a known case for an innovative stadium concept. We had a few Erasmus Plus projects who are working in the field of green sport, and so on and so forth. And of course, some of the major sports organizations themselves, they already have some environmental sustainability strategies to show for. And of course, we also cooperated with other relevant Commission departments, some of which I've listed here. All in all, we had 11 meetings, dozens of subgroup meetings, 120 participants contributed. And of course, we had a big challenge, because how do you put EU sport in one document and make recommendations about winter sports, summer sport, from water sports? Every country have vast differences. So we used some guiding principles also, and we tried to make recommendations in a way that they can be that they can reach the right target audiences. Our guiding principles were the European Green Deal, previous work of the IOC, and of course the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the most relevant ones I've listed here. Now, how did we then go about structuring this vast topic? We clustered the recommendations along 4 main themes: sustainable sport infrastructure, sustainable sport events, and then a topic that combines capacity building, education and promotion of good practices, and last but not least, cross-sectoral cooperation. That is the theme that came back, or was a recurrent issue, that it's really important that very many different stakeholders need to work together. And to give you a flavor of what the expert group understood as different stakeholders, an example of the organizations and representatives that need to work together are here on the slide. So take a quick look if you see yourselves there, organizations you represent, or maybe something that is missing. But if I would spend a lot of time on this, I would get to the other points. But it's take back or retain the point of the importance of cross-sectoral cooperation, which is also not, I think, very new, but we felt it was important to remind our readers about this. Now, the report, which we labeled the Sport Sector Playbook for the European Green Deal, was published at the end of last year, just before Christmas. And we were happy to get the commissioner responsible for sport also on board. She wrote a preface, promoted it on her social media. And this is a leaflet. There's the full report, which is available for download And here are some headline recommendations. I will just pick up a few, because this is a mobility and transport focused webinar, so we'll not go into the other issues that we address, but I can't do a presentation about this topic without mentioning the need for measuring the baseline carbon footprint. This has been quite a striking finding that few sports organizations or any, from clubs to federations, are involved. Okay, the international active ones, they do, but it's quite surprising how little is actually done in this field. And there was also a realization that easy to use tools, ideally free, is something that also the grassroots sports sector would need. So the playbook calls on policymakers to actually establish a baseline carbon footprint for the entire sports sector. And likewise, we call on all sports organizations, federations, and ultimately also clubs, grassroots sports level, to know actually your carbon footprint. And of course, other issues are linked to, prominent issues were linked to the renovation and maintenance of existing sport infrastructure. That has also been an important topic, notably due to the rise of energy prices, that this topic gained even more traction. Now, let me come to the topic of today's webinar, and I was asked to focus in particular on some of the recommendations in this area. Now, one of the main findings is that when it comes to major sport events, this will of course not have the same high number for more locally organized events, but for major international sport events like Olympic Games, football, World Cups, or European Championships, and the like, up to 85% of the event's carbon footprint is caused by fan travel, who, due to the international nature of the event, are usually traveling by air. So that's really a big one, and I don't think we have the answers yet, but we have some recommendations how to mitigate, or at least try to reduce the carbon footprint of sport events. So we invite the organizers to start planning ahead and looking at the event calendar, and even start by thinking, do we actually need all these events? And if we do need them, can we organize them in a way that we consolidate them in time, or that we can piggyback when other large events are organized, so that we can reduce the travel needs of participants and spectators. Likewise, and now the video was blocking the slide partially. The other really important issue is to limit the zigzagging across regions, countries, and I added, because we didn't have that, continents. Think about the FIFA World Cup 2030, where they actually want to have a few games on another continent. That's not, it's understandable for historic reasons, but it's from a green perspective, this is clearly not very exemplary. Now, similarly, for sport practitioners, even if you're not organizing major sport events, think about your mobility plans. Of course, think about public transport, but also make it, and low carbon vehicles, but also make it easy for your audiences, but maybe even the participants, to get to your venues, in a green and environmentally friendly way. And also think, of course, about the use of rail. If you have longer distance to cover, that should be the priority option. And there's again the case for cooperation between the sports federations, public authorities, and transport companies. And in Germany, I'm German, so I happen to know this quite well. For football Bundesliga matches, most clubs have so-called combi tickets, where the public transport's already included in the ticket price, and also for the UEFA Euro, there are discounted ticket prices for the German railway company. These are just some examples. Now, of course, linked to those considerations already mentioned is the choice of venue. Where do you organize this? Are these places easily accessible? Do you have good public transport links? And also provide incentives for your audiences, for your spectators to use public transport. Maybe you can even make some games around this or promote this. And also really crucially, don't forget the last mile mobility and make it easy for the audiences, for your spectators, and promote apps that facilitate such last mile travels. Now, I'm now transitioning slowly and coming to the last part of my presentation, recapping also by way of images some of the recommendations. We need also for the outdoor sport community, too often you see people leaving the city center and their bikes are on car bike racks. Ideally, those places like the ones on the image should be reachable either by nice bike routes, or you should have maybe not necessarily only on high-speed trains, but also on local trains, more spaces for bike racks. And that actually brings me to a point I wanted to draw your attention on, namely that just in April, a European declaration, a cycling declaration, was adopted by the Council on Transport that includes 8 principles and 36 commitments, and it provides a framework for those who want to promote cycling as a means of transport. I just really wanted to flag this briefly and encourage you to take a look at the document. It's the first time that there's also recognition of the importance of the cycling industry as providers of green jobs and the many health and environmental benefits of cycling as a way of commuting to work, for instance, and many other things. Now, what happens after such a fine report is published? That's always the question. And one of the answers is, well, we have to work on the recommendations, but what can the EU's role be in doing that? And one of our answers is to provide a platform. It's a network of a community of practice on green and sustainable sport. And you can see the link here if you are interested in exchanging on this topic, discussing and ideally also working on implementing some of the recommendations in the sports sector playbook for the European Green Deal. You're invited to join us. We are meeting a few times per year also for capacity building webinars. So that would be an invitation to look out for this. And there will be a yearly conference also where these issues will be discussed. Sustainability will also be part of the EU work plan for sport. And one of the things I'm doing today is, of course, inform other stakeholders and multipliers about these about this playbook. So I'm glad for the opportunity that I had. Now, in closing, I would like to point out our Eurobarometer on sports, and I will not go through the whole thing. This would be a separate presentation, but this is from last September, our latest available. And I'd just like to point out that when Europeans were asked if the sports organizations where they practice sports are, doing any environmental sustainability actions, if they were aware of that, only half said, yeah, I know about something. And only 12% said, actually my sports club or fitness club or whatever is promoting sustainable means of transport. So this actually shows that there's a long way to go. And I'd like to end with the echoing the call of the Commissioner Ivanova that invites you to work on acting and following up on these recommendations, and to continue thinking about what your role can be making sport greener. Thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this interesting presentation. And we do actually have a question here in the chat, which is from Johanna Felber. A question to Mr. Fischer, and that's you. Are you also reaching out to infrastructure providers with these recommendations, especially broader crossing trains, travels, or taking the bike on train is often very difficult?
I share the pain. I understand the question, and that's also why I personally I selected, not by chance, the German ICE high-speed train, because then there, I think only the newest generation, which is not yet on the market, will provide such opportunities. The European Cycling Declaration is driven by the Department for Transport, so I suppose they will make that outreach. It's not our core business, but I'm sure they do. One other thing I can say is we hope that we will get a chance for a workshop during the European Week of Regions and Cities in October, which is the biggest annual get-together of cohesion policy stakeholders, if you will, EU regional policy meeting. And there we hope to have a workshop that covers similar issues, and there lots of urban planners and regional ministries and municipalities will be present. But point taken, and I'll liaise with my colleagues from DG Move on that front.
Sounds fantastic. Okay, thank you very much, Peter. And if you, the audience, think of questions, you can still post them in the chat, and I'll try to address them at the very end.
All right, I'll still be around for a while. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So next presenter for today is Anders Larsson, Associate Professor at University of Gothenburg and researcher in MISTRA Sport and Outdoors. The floor is yours, Anders.
Thank you. I rehearsed the presentation and sharing the presentation before. Hopefully it will work again. Let's see. So does this look like a presentation in presentation mode?
Yes.
Great.
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Karin, and thank you for coming to this webinar. I'm happy to be part of this. As a researcher in the MISTRA Sport and Outdoors program, I am a bit new to this forum, and also as a researcher in mobility and transport and planning issues rather than outdoor sports and recreation. It's an exciting environment to present and see what kind of questions and comments that might come. My experience from outdoor sports would be from orienteering, so I'm part of planning for the biggest orienteering event of the year in the world, coming to my hometown 2026. So there's a lot of issues in practice that has bearing on this. But now I will talk more from a sort of research perspective, the topic of accessibility to outdoor activities and specifically the potential for public transport. So I will begin by just highlighting that it's important to see that there are different contexts when it comes to travel to outdoor recreation and sports in terms of tourism travel, where travel is usually involves longer trips and also longer stays at specific places. Travel to events could of course also be tourism, but specifically going to events as participants or spectators is something different compared to tourism travel in many aspects, especially for outdoor recreation activities. And then what we in MISTRA Sport and Outdoors have been mostly focusing on so far are the everyday activities, where outdoor activities and sport are part of all other everyday activities that are on the agenda for individuals throughout the world. And just to lift this to say that there are definitely different problems, different solutions to different contexts, and therefore there's not really one solution for all to look for. Very quickly, the role of public transport in all of this. For tourism, it's usually tourism travel involves long-haul travel to one specific site. If we talk about outdoor activities, especially, and outdoor sports activities, it's often, not always, but often located remotely in terms of population density and public transport reach and the ordinary transport network. So it's not very often a useful option. And it's a challenge to find sustainable alternatives and still be able to supply some sort of commercial products, I would say. There are, of course, specific destinations where it works, but generally so. Events we heard from Peter here that flying is a huge contributor to pollution from events, and since it's been a growth in international sort of participation, both as participant but also as audience to different national events, this is definitely an issue. Public transport is more of an alternative here because events to a larger degree than outdoor recreation sports events would be in urban areas or in built-up areas, and there is more potential for using existing public transport there. However, research concludes in many studies that it's, even if the public transport system is there, the lack of knowledge how to use public transport is a deterrent for using it. Okay, and then it comes to the everyday activities of outdoor and the recreation and outdoor sports. There's less research on this topic, where public transport might be a realistic alternative when you want to go to a point and finish at this finish elsewhere, which is in the same urban area where you can use the public transport system. However, in rural areas, it's very rarely so that public transport provides access to everyday activities. So another distinction that I also think is important to point to, transport is usually used interchangeably with mobility, and you sometimes hear access and accessibility as well. So transport has traditionally been used to understand just the trip, and it's often linked to technological and material focus. So we talk often about, when we look towards solutions, we think vehicles, infrastructure, electrification, and so on. Whilst mobility has opened up the concept and involving humans, actually, and surprisingly enough, maybe that wasn't a key issue before, but now it means that transport is not just a way of going from A to B, but it's part of life, how you structure life. Now, what sort of potentials and mobility opportunities you have as a human, and that also obviously includes the fact that there would be different opportunities or different types of, for example, groups in society. And it also highlights that movement is part of everyday life, not just something that that appears because you want to go from A to B, but it's the way you plan and the things that you think you can do. Accessibility puts focus on the integration between where people live and where they want to go, and how this can be solved through the mobility system, basically. And the difference here is that it puts sort of the focus on how to reach desirable activities, and also brings forward more clearly how proximity could be a strategy for sustainability in the long run. So it's not just a way of trying to make transport more efficient, but also it could also be to actually travel less because the things you want to do are located closer to you. This is basically saying more or less the same thing, so I will probably skip this. If you want to read something and hasn't already done it, I can say that this Sustainable Mobility Paradigm article from Bannister makes a good sort of basic reading for understanding how transport and transport planning and need to change, and what the aspect of that. I would like to be a bit more concrete and use the concept of accessibility, which is the concept that we have been working with mostly in the transport thematic work package in MISTRA Sport and Outdoors, to illustrate sustainable accessibility by 3 different questions that will sort of encapsulate what we're talking about. To what do we want to have access? When I say access in this context, I mean geographical access, and that includes obviously also access as it sometimes is used in municipal and other planning context, where it's more focused on access for disabled, for example, and access to buildings, etc. This is obviously part of this, but this is more linked on geography and reach, so to say. So we want to go to sites for outdoor and sport recreation. It could be anywhere around the corner. In some countries in the world, it's based on the fact that you want some sort of experiential values at these places, nature-based. There might be specialized places for specific experiences in specific sports or specific other types of specific experiences. And often are these places established since a long time and difficult to just relocate. And it also has an important positive economic impact on its locality or region in many cases, which also is an argument for not just sort of closing down or moving things to spots where people actually live. So by what means? So here, of course, if we want to look at sustainable access, we need to travel more by public transport, or as I have said, shared transport. I will come back to that. Cycle and walk. Pluses mean that cycle and walk actually are positive. So it's not just emissionless, but it's also creates value for public health, for example, to cycle and walk. So it's a win in this. But and for whom? Well, will the future for sustainable outdoor activities be for everyone? I think you can discuss this in terms of capacity. Will everyone be able to use the new electrified cars or fleets of different vehicles. The price, surely. Proximity, is it possible to do things near where you live, or will we still need to travel a lot to get to places where we want to perform outdoor sports or recreation? And of course, there's a policy and governance aspect to this as well, but surely there is a aspect of social sustainability as well behind this transition process we're in the middle of, hopefully, at this point. So a few short reflections from a study we have been doing, or are actually in the finishing, on outdoor recreation in this case, in southwest Sweden, and travel. Just to give an example here, where you have a public transport stop, and at the very right of the picture there is an arrow with 1.7 kilometers, and that's one of the best examples of how public transport and outdoor recreations are linked together. So from here it's basically downhill in this part of Sweden. So I would say that it's not really impressive in that sense. So the results we have asked people who travel to 5 different areas for outdoor recreation, and we have had surveys out and at places where people come either by public transport or reachable by public transport or car or other modes, and it's clear that car is the main mode, public transport less so. It's clear that the respondents is using a routine when they select plan the trip. They just do whatever they usually do. So it's very little room for alternatives. If you take the car, you take the car. If you have a car outside, you do it. But if you plan for if you do go by public transport, you do that as well. One worrying outcome or result is that 1 in 4 would actually not do the trip at all to this outdoor recreation site if they were forced, so to speak, not to use their preferred mode of transport. And that's, of course, is something that we need to think of when we plan for different policy and other interventions. Public transport was actually seen as the worst potential provider of access to outdoor recreation based on the experience of previous trips from the respondents, not just the trip that we asked for at this specific event. And convenience, so like above, same procedure as last time, and short journey times are the key to what would be the competitive advantage to cars, and also for people living close by, of course, for cycling, or in some cases for walking. So implications for planning, spatial planning or other planning. I think there's first and fundamental need for sort of a rethink of the function and the role of public transport in society overall. Is public transport still only there to support basically commuting to work and school, or does it have a wider role? In that case, that requires quite a lot of rethink and reorganization, I think, at least in a Swedish context. If we include, as I mentioned before, the social dimension of sustainability, it's really so that sustainable access becomes much more than just a transport problem. But if there is no way of actually traveling to these areas sustainably, then without having an expensive electric car, for example, then a smaller part of the population will be able to actually use these and come out into these areas. So integration of transport and land use planning is key. there are, of course, another side of the coin. If this is very successful with public transport solutions, we might risk to come into conflict with what would be the traditional values of outdoor recreation, at least, to be a bit quiet, a bit special, a bit exclusive. If there is a lot of people coming to the same point, which is one of the sort of problematic aspects of public transport, that you're only sort of possible to come or to leave and enter at specific points. So maybe we can challenge not just what public transport is or should be, but we might also need to challenge what the locations and the experiential values of outdoor activities are. Can we really realistically expect to be able to do and be what we can do and where we can be in the near future in terms of experiential values? So it's not just about making transport more sustainable or supporting, for example, public transport, but we also need to think in terms of how can we plan outdoor recreation sites and areas in this case, so they might not need to be the most fascinating natural experiences all the time. It might be actually so that many, including myself, would be quite happy with an area near to where I live, where outdoor recreation is planned in a way that there are tracks, signs, etc., etc. Forest, yes, maybe a creek, yes, and one or two birds, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the fantastic experiences every time, and that might be one way of solving this in proximity. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Anders. You were almost just on time. Perfect. And I love the two birds. I think we should keep them. We have one question. So if you can answer that in 1 minute, it's fine. Okay. So, and the question is, has there been any research on how to, or what can change mindset, given that information that you presented on the southern Swedish example?
Yes, there's a lot. I'm not a transport behavior researcher, but yes, there are a number of studies looking at behavior and change of mindset, and it is, I mean, generally the result is that it is not possible to change mindset by only either stick or either carrot, in the sense that you can't just change, regulate, make it more problematic to take the car. You also need something more. You need something that makes people actually feel that they are gaining, or at least supporting sustainability, for example. So these two things needs to go hand in hand. But there are no specific one sort of golden bullet that will make it solve the issue. It's a really complicated matter to change behavior and everyday behavior, especially not the least in transport.
Thank you. I was on mute. Sorry for that. Thank you so much for your presentation, Anders. And we will now move on to the next presenter, which is Sara Berggren, project manager at the Swedish Tourist Association. Welcome, Sara. And the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will also try to share my screen. Let's see. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
And only not the notes, I hope.
Only the presentation.
Great, yes. Great. So nice to be here and join this event. very interesting topic and also a challenging topic, like Anders said. My name is Sara Bergen. I'm from the Swedish Tourist Association, like Karin said, and I'm a project manager for a project aimed at reducing the emissions from travel. So what sort of organization is the Swedish Tourist Association? It's actually one of Sweden's largest non-profit organizations. It was founded in Uppsala in 1885, and the motto for STF is to know your country. And we have about 250 facilities all over the country, different kinds of facilities. We have hostels and hotels and mountain stations and huts. And some of these are owned by us, such as the mountain stations and the huts, but we also have a lot of accommodations that are franchise. We have about 840 guest nights per year and almost 240 employees and 206,000 members. We also have a number of local groups, about 65 local groups that are organizing thousands of activities each year in Sweden, such as hiking and cultural activities and so forth. And we also function as a consultative body for legislators and government agencies in Sweden. And the motto of STF is to get more people to discover Sweden in a sustainable way. Sorry, I forgot to change the slide here. Let's see, this should be the slide. So the vision is to get more people to discover Sweden in a sustainable way. And the project that I'm working with is a way to try to achieve this vision. So in 2020, STF conducted a GHG emission assessment, and that clearly showed that the majority of our emissions are related to travel to our accommodations, approximately 80%. And this assessment was based on default values, and these default values were that were used were calculated by researchers from Chalmers University, and they looked into the climate impacts from tourism. So this was like an assessment that was made, but we would like to, we wanted to, in this project, we wanted to look into the more specific numbers of emissions from travel. Also, we had data, some assessments showing that more than 50% of our guests travel by car. So we know that we need to change the behavior. This was what Anders talked about. We need more people to choose public transport or different other types of climate-friendly mobility that does not involve using your private car just to ride yourself. And due to the large emissions from travel, STF launched a specific project with the aim of lowering the emissions from travel. And this was about a year ago. So the aim of this project is twofold. It's partly to decrease emissions from travel, but it's also to make outdoor recreation accessible to everyone. So not only to those people who own their own car. And we know from previous surveys amongst our members that many would like to travel with public transport. So why aren't they? I did an overview of current research. For instance, the research that has been done within the MISTRA program. And we also have had some of our own data at the beginning of this project, such as member surveys on public transport and so on. And based on this, we made a list of the following obstacles that could be identified, like why aren't people traveling the way they say they would like to? So these are some of the main obstacles, and these are also obstacles that we try to address in this project with incentives that we are working with. So the main ones are, for instance, time, that people perceive it as very time-consuming to travel with public transport and not use their own car. It's perceived also as less flexible and difficult if you have a lot of equipment, such as skiing gear, especially during the wintertime, but also if you have small children, if you have dogs and so on. It's perceived as expensive and there is a lack of information of how to travel with public transport, especially if you travel long distances throughout Sweden with different modes of transport, and where the modes of transport are owned or run by different companies. Also, we have the issue of last mile. So oftentimes you can travel, for instance, long distances by train, but it's difficult to get all the way the last mile to the accommodation. Perhaps there is a bus, but the bus would only leave maybe once or twice a day, or you would have to walk a few kilometers to get all the way to the accommodation. And of course, if you have a lot of gear, that is an obstacle. And also many of our guests and members want to be able to travel at the location, and that is also perceived as difficult if you don't have your own car. So the next step in this project was to look into the specific travel habits of guests at specific accommodations. So we looked into some different kinds of accommodations and the guests' travel habits at these accommodations. And they are located throughout the country. I mean, you can see on the map here that most of them are in the south of Sweden, but we tried to spread them as well as we could throughout the country. And they also represent the sorts of accommodations that we have within SDF. So both mountain stations and these kind of smaller guest houses and so on. And we also have some local groups that are represented in the project. And the criteria that were chosen when choosing the accommodations was that it's possible today to travel there by public transport, because I mean, as SDF, we cannot start like a new bus line. We have to work with the systems or the public transport that is already in place. But we would like to motivate our guests through different incentives to use the public transport or car share. So use the public transport that is already in place. So one other criteria was that a large part of the guests travel by car, even though it's possible to travel by public transport. And also that the hosts at the accommodations are committed to the project, so they feel that they really want to work with this issue with their guests. Oops. And then we did a survey. We actually have this data collection running. We had during the last year, and we also have it this year, and hopefully we will continue to really get verification also and look into our data during several years and see that we can verify the data we collect the first year. So at each accommodation, the guests can see this flyer and they can read some information about the project, and they can scan the QR code, and then they reach the survey. And in the survey, there are different kinds of questions about how they traveled, mainly like their mode of transport and the distance. And from this information, we have done emission calculations. So we get some more specific information on the emissions that are caused by the travel to our accommodations. And there are also questions about what obstacles they perceive. So as to see if the list of obstacles that was listed in the beginning here of the presentation, is that correct, correctly perceived from us. And also some questions about incentives for more climate-friendly travel habits. And the incentives that they could grade in the survey are incentives that we have ownership of. So incentives that we as an organization can work with in different ways. And like I said, we will have a follow-up survey during this year and the coming years. And we got approximately 950 respondents or people responding to the survey, which, I mean, it's quite good, but it's still quite a small portion of the total amount of guests staying at these accommodations. So that I would say is really like a challenge to get enough respondents, involving the hosts because they have a lot of different duties, and also getting, of course, representative responses. Because one risk is that the people responding are the ones that are more prone to, traveling by public transport and have a great interest in climate issues and so on. So that we need to bear in mind when looking at the results from the data collection. But we got some initial results anyway from the data collection. So we can see that our data from before is actually in a way verified, because more than half of our guests travel by car. We could also see that in general, on average, there were about 1.7 people per car. So that's why we also had questions in the survey about interest for car pooling or car sharing. Here you can see that quite a large portion responded that they traveled by train, about 36%. I think this is not completely representable. If you look at our figures from before, that says about like 20 or a bit more than 20%. So that needs to be beared in mind when looking at these figures. But these are anyway some initial results from the survey. And also we got an updated GHG emission number from our guest travel. So this is the figure now that we're using in our climate reporting. It's 50 kilos per trip per guest. And like I said, we also had some questions about incentives, and these are incentives then that are listed that we have identified that we thought we could also implement as an organization. And the incentives at the top are the ones that got like the highest grade. So number 1 was most popular, and number 7 was the least popular. So 20% discount on train and bus tickets, and better information on tours, and better information on public transport were listed as quite high, but all of them got quite high grading. The one that stood out was really the 20% discount on train and bus tickets. So anyway, based on the results or the data collection, we are now in this kind of testing phase of the project. So we're testing this different incentives, and we will also try to scale up this testing in the future. And what we're doing now is testing better discount on bus trips and train tickets. So we're collaborating, for instance, with a bus company to get a better discount for our members. We have also improved our information sites. So we collect on one site information about how to travel climate friendly, about different member discounts that we have on public transport. We have a map with accommodations where there is a bus stop or train station nearby, so you can see all the accommodations on one map that have this, and also accommodations with charging stations for electric vehicles and so on. And one thing that we're also trying out now is access to a car sharing platform as a member benefit. And so far, quite a lot of our members have joined this platform. So that is really nice to see. And also at some of these pilot accommodations, we're trying out something that we call climate bonuses for climate smart traveling. So the guests, if they show a bus ticket or a train ticket, that they get a form of discount, specific discount at these accommodations, such as a locally produced gift or a discount in the restaurant and so on. So this was started then in the beginning of 2024, and we will follow up the effect of the incentives with surveys. We're also looking at, for instance, the number of members that are using the car sharing pool, or the number of members that are will be booking bus and train tickets with discounts, and also the range of our advertisements for the climate bonuses. So that is a way of also looking into the effects of these incentives. But this is something that we're just starting to try out. Also, one important thing, or one important part of this project was the climate summit that we organized in September 2023. And the aim of this summit was really to focus on and raise awareness on the issue of climate emissions from travel to outdoor activities, but also address how climate change affects outdoor recreation in general, like the conditions for outdoor recreation. So we had a lot of different participants. For instance, Anders was there. Participants from national authorities, academia, politics, civil society. And during this summit, we also had the signing of this protocol that you see in the slide. It's called the Kebnekaise Protocol because this meeting was held in Kebnekaise, which is the highest mountain in Sweden. And we had 8 organizations, including SDF, that signed this protocol. And the protocol, the aim of the protocol was to really like make it clear what the next step should be in this journey to reduce the emissions from travel. And some of the organizations that signed were, for instance, from the orienteering organization in Sweden, the scouting organization in Sweden, the Swedish Canoeing Association, and so on. And some of the requirements include, for instance, the shell requirements include that each organization should assess the GHG emissions related to travel to identify the main emission sources within the organization, and also present and implement an action plan aimed at mitigating these emissions. And during this summit, we also established a new network, the Kebnekaise Network, which is aimed at sharing experience and good practices on these issues. So what is the next step for this project? We now have financing for at least this year, and so we're looking into more financing, but we also want to share the experiences from these first years of the project that we have completed at the end of the year. And also, of course, continue our efforts to fulfill the Kebnekaise Protocol. And like I said, we're just starting to implement and test these sort of incentives. So we want to scale up the current incentives, and we also want to develop more tools in this area. And also have a closer collaboration with researchers, because like Anders said, we know that these behavioral changes that we need to see will take a lot of time. So for us, for SDF, this area of work will be a focus area for a long time to come, I hope. And we really have to hang in there to see some actual changes on the ground. But we will continue our efforts and also collaborate with other organizations as much as we can in this area. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, for this interesting presentation. And I actually have a question for you, but I'm going to save it until the end because we need to move on to the next presenter. So also if the audience has any questions, again, for Sarah or for Johanna that comes next, please put them in the chat and we will try to address them as soon as possible. And with that, I would like to welcome Johanna Felber, which is an international communication and public relations for the climate protection project in the DAV. So welcome, Johanna. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. I hope you can see the presentation well. If not, please just let me know. Yes, thank you for the introduction. My name is Johanna Felber. I am from the German Alpine Club, working there on the federal association level. And I'm part of the big climate protection project we have here since 2021. And I will share with you our experiences so far with our sustainable mobility efforts. So first of all, for everybody of you who doesn't know who we are the biggest mountaineering association in the world, actually, with our 1.5 million members. They are organized in 355 local clubs who are then members of the federal association where I work for. All in all, we have 325 huts all over the Alpine region and also in the German lower mountain range, like in the middle and south of Germany. Also, we are a sports and nature conservation organization. That means that we're on the one side we're doing all the sports events and sports stuff and so on, and on the other side we're also eligible to intervene in, for example, development projects in the Alps and put our statements in there officially. Right now we have 4 ongoing interventions that are like on this big official level, where we're in, where we're part of, and we're trying to make our points. But on many, many other levels, we are also involved in, in making, for example, mountain bike trails in a nature like friendly way and an environmental friendly way. Also like climbing spots. We try to support the people on site to being able to care for this climbing spots also in an environmentally friendly way, meaning respecting the birds, their like the breeding seasons and so on. That's just a couple of examples. Also, actually the core of our organization, the base of our organization are our volunteers. We have like 2.5 million hours of volunteer work invested in our organizations every year. Around 55,000 hours of them are going into nature and climate efforts. We also have a designated position, like volunteer position as a climate coordinator. And right now we have around 250 officially registered climate coordinators, which makes around 2/3 of our local clubs already really engaging in our climate protection project. So our project is like our main goal is being climate neutral by 2030 by fair means. That means that we're avoiding, like first avoiding, then reducing, and then setting our emissions off. And right now we're in the phase that we're trying to avoid and reduce as much emissions as we can. Also, we are knee-deep into balancing and accounting for our emissions. We started this in 2022, and we have the results since November last year for our first emission balance. So all in all, for the German Alpine Club, we have 51,000 tons of CO2 emissions. Until 2026, we want to reduce 30% of them. So we're just into the emission balance from 2023 now. We're still waiting for the results, and we will see if we already had some progress from then. We hope to have the results like mid of the year. We also have a climate fund where we subsidize projects from our local clubs. So far, we have 37 projects that we could fund over this with this money, and very like a variety of projects were implemented through this fund. For example, you see here a solar power plant on top of a local club, like I think it's a climbing center. Yes, and I mean, the last point, we have only 6 years left. So I actually showed this presentation to a colleague of mine, and he was like, "Oh shit, it's only like 6 years. That's not so much time." But we're really into reducing our emissions, and this like mobility is a big factor for us. Around 30% of our emissions, like total emissions, are caused by our mobility behavior. This is because like the core of our organization are the events we're doing. So the trips and also the courses we do on site to train people be good mountaineers, like climbing courses or glacier courses, for example. And half of our emissions are due to this events. If we're looking a bit deeper into how the emissions in the events are distributed, you see that 2/3 almost is of travel. Is due to our travels. Reducing these emissions is kind of simple. I mean, we already heard that it's much about public transport, and it's still it is very effective and with a lot of potential to spill over, because we as an organization have the possibility to be like a role model for other people and like a playground to try public transport out, and then maybe people also engage with it a bit more in their private ventures into the mountains, for example. Our goal is to have less car travel and more public transport travel. We do not have any specific numbers on, or not yet, on how it's distributed in this travel. I mean, this is all of our travel, but I can say that so far, only 15% of our trips are done with public transport. The others are not necessarily only by car. We also have like a ride-sharing platform, for example, where people can come together to share their rides into the mountains. And also many local clubs have own buses they use, which is also kind of a ride-sharing. So our public tours are really only like the public transport tours. That's what it means by it. And yeah, right now we have only 15%. So the goal is to rise this number, and many local clubs actually already engage in this behavior. So we have climate action kind of on 3 levels. One is the local club level, where we have also a variety of climate action being taken. The mobility is just one part of it. It can mean, like, for example, buses, like I just said, or we have people who have like, if you pay for a course, you pay a kind of extra fee. It's called then sometimes a climate euro or a climate fee, and for that that money they use to spend again for climate action projects, for example. So there's a big variety of projects on this local level. We have this climate fund where we also subsidize kind of some of those projects, and we have some flagship projects and like communication and information supporting our goal and being very clear about how you can get into the mountains and what is possible. So I have brought some of our projects to you. They are like in a big variety. So not only on mobility wise, just to let you know where like how broad our like kind of portfolio is. We have some clubs who are engaging in this local and regional food, for example. Our club in Erlangen, they have switched completely to vegetarian food. And they are also offering like reusable containers in their climbing gym. Then we have our cabins, who is like, the cabins are usually already very, how do you say, they are using much renewable energy because they're not connected to the net usually. So usually they use solar power or hydropower, which makes them already kind of sustainable, but also some really try to promote public transport, for example. On their website, they try to show how you get there by public transport, and they communicate this as standard, for example. We also had a project kind of similar, that what Sarah just told you about, that there was an incentive for people who got 1 night for free if they came by public transport. We're currently checking if we can reinstall this, because this was really, really cool and very accepted thing. We also have educational projects like tree planting. One local club in Ludwigsburg, they planted a tree for every member they have. So now they have like a forest of 8,000 trees they're still caring for. And this is a very, this is not only like this planting a tree for the climate thing, but a very educational thing, which is also very important in this mobility sector. We see this, for example, in our courses when we do use public transport, and we give people this chance to try it out. They are very happy that they actually get this chance and can have a look into, okay, now I understand, and now I can learn from someone who's really into using public transport. Because like I asked before, it's often not super easy. Like ticket systems are a bit complicated, or you don't know which line to take, or if you want to cross the border, it's very complicated. So the educational factor of our tour and course program is really important for us. And the last example is from our club in Hof. They did a a workshop evening and invited everybody on their club to join and be open and have an open discussion about what climate action they can take. This was very, very important for them. They said that the response was very good, and especially opening up this room for also fears and being skeptic and thinking about, is this even like doable? Can we do this as a local club, which is very small and only volunteers are working there? And that really helped us to build the trust and to build a sense of commitment and engagement in their project. So now I want to focus a bit more on our on the mobility and flagship project. So together with 3 local clubs, we as a federal club subsidized a bus line. This bus line is in the south of Munich, so in the Alpine region, and it's how do you say? It starts on the last train station before on the last station of the train line from Munich, and there the bus starts and goes into a very remote mountain valley. The bus line was there before. We just subsidized that it is going on the weekends in a wider timetable, so that we can spend 10 hours max in the mountains. So if you took the first bus, you were there I think 8 in the morning, and on 6 in the evening, the last one went back. It's still on, and in 2025, actually, the Munich traffic or the Munich public transport provider is taking this bus line into their hands and putting it further. So this was an example where we initiated to solve this problem of the last mile and this accessibility problem in a region which is very frequented, for example, from Munich people, and now it's into the public transport, or now it will be part of the public transport regularly, which is really cool. Another example is also Munich-based example. Our local club of Munich is our biggest we have, and they also started a mountain bus with 4 lines going in 4 different directions. And from this year on, this is also part of the public transport system, and you can use it with the ticket you would use for any other public transport in Munich and also in Germany. From last year on, we have the so-called Germany tickets, where you pay 49 euros for 1 month of public near transportation, which is very cool. And also this is an example of where we could initiate a bus line that's now available for everybody, not only members of the German Alpine Club. My second example is we bringing our volunteers together. I think Sarah also touched upon this topic of networking and the importance of being in exchange and learning from each other. I mean, that's why we're here. So we're also trying to bring together our volunteers and try to bring them together with experts, with people from other clubs and people who really took action in this sector of climate action. Our upcoming event is in June, and we have the topic of mobility there because it's so important for us. For example, we have one keynote speaker. She is really promoting eco-point climbing. She started a website where you can look up climbing spots all over Europe, and they connected the public transportation there. So firstly, the train and bus system, and then also a route by bike for the last mile you can take. So we're trying really to bring together all this different perspectives and different experiences to make it possible for everybody to learn from each other. This is also very important on a activist level, kind of. If you have this sense of belonging and the sense of I'm part of a big project, it motivates you, and it really helps to not back off of this sometimes very difficult topic. My last example there is our YouTube series. It's called Summer of My Life, where we where we did some video clips showing ambitious mountaineering trips combined with information about the climate change in the Alps. And we were showing the advantages of public transport just on the go. So our goal was to establish using the public transport to go into the mountains as a standard, and also showing that it's not that you have to dismiss your ambitious like mountaineering spots and destinations just because you go there by train. You can also go on like a on the highest peak in Tyrol by public transport. That's no problem. Also, we showed how cool it is to start at one point and to end on a different point, not by just saying it to people, but by showing our tour and by showing people what is possible using the public transport. We had very good responses to this from inside our club and also from outside. It was really, we had really much success with it. It was really successful, and we're trying to, or we're doing a sequel this year now, which I'm really looking forward to. Maybe one last point to this YouTube series. We were also trying to change or to show that it's not necessarily you pick your destination and then you're going exactly there, but to change the perspective a bit. Maybe see, okay, what is it that I want to do? Do I want to go climbing or biking or hiking, or do I want to go mountaineering on like a very ambitious route? And then to see, okay, where can I go by public transport? Because sometimes we're so set on our destination and we're not really thinking about, it's not about going on this very specific point on Earth, but it's about the experience we want to have, and it's about the nature we want to feel and we want to be in. So this is also a part of our communication strategy, to shift the perspective away from set bucket lists that you just cross, but go to a bit more flexible and a bit more nature-focused approach to going into the mountains. So this was it from our projects and communication examples. I have one thing left, and I try to show it to you now because we have a website. Do you still see my screen, or do you see the presentation?
We see the screen of Europe.
Of a map?
Yeah.
Yeah. Map. Okay. All right. Perfect. So all this is our tour planning platform, and this is a kind of new how do you say feature. All these red lines are the train lines all over across Europe. And if you zoom in, I will just zoom in here in the Alps because I know this region a bit better. You can see also the blue lines, which is the bus lines, and you also see the stops. So if you want to go on a particular place, you can go here and say, okay, I'm taking this path up here, then I'm taking this stop. And so it makes my research so much easier to just put in, like Google Maps, for example, now, okay, this is my home bus stop or train stop, and this is the train stop I want to go, or the bus stop I want to go. Because this was a big challenge often to find out which stop is the last one before I can approach my destination. And this makes it a whole lot easier. And as you can see, this is not only working in the app, but this is also working, for example, up here in Sweden, where you can just zoom in. And this is a very cool feature I really can recommend using.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much. And it's even in Sweden. I will check it out for sure.
Yes, and please, if you find something, because I mean, this is like a big like the databases from it's collected from every country. And if you find something where you say, oh, that's not very accurate, please reach out. We're always happy to to improve it.
For sure. Oh, but perfect. So we have also like a few questions. You got a minute to respond before we need to move on to the next presenter. And of course, people are asking for the link here, and they are asking, is it also available for free in Outdoor Active app?
Yes.
Yes, good. And then we had a question here, like, yeah, there's some, but what is the #1 measure that helps the DAV reduce its carbon footprint?
Yeah, so until now, I can't tell you that because we have just this one emission balance. So we're still waiting for the results of the follow-up account to actually see where we're successful the most. But yeah, I would say one of our big projects are the infrastructure projects because they have so much impact. We have many climbing gyms that use solar power and that are also use more than they need, so they also put in the net. And we do this on our mountain huts as well. So these are the measures with like big invest, but also big outcome. The others are somewhat a bit difficult to measure, but yeah, up to the point where we have the second account, I hope I'm able to tell a bit more when we have it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And if you like, I think you can ask the comments in the chat. That would be great for the ones that are possible to do so. So thank you very much, Johanna. And now I'm going to ask Mike to come back and give your presentation. Welcome. Now, I can't hear you, Mike.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I couldn't find where the mute was because I have two screens running. So yeah, typical incompetency when it comes to technology. So thanks very much again. What a great series of presentations we've had so far. It's been really inspiring, and just listening to Johanna, I mean, a lot resonates with some of the stuff that we've been doing within ENOS. So as I mentioned at the start, we are a network, and we have been developing a new vision, but our mission we've had for quite a long time, which is about taking action together, and it is that principle of doing things together for the sustainable and responsible development of outdoor sports across Europe. So that's kind of our key, our mission of what we try and do. Back in 2021, we developed a policy position paper on the European Green Deal from an outdoor sports perspective. And within that position paper, we came up with a series of actions that we all should take as outdoor sports enthusiasts and organizations, a series of recommendations for the European Commission, for national governments, for local authorities, for or all sorts of other organizations as well, and also some commitments within ENOS. And that kind of framed how we started to think about our sustainability agenda and what we're actually doing. And that Green Deal paper is still very live for us. We still are working through the actions, recommendations and commitments, and our sustainability working group is very focused on delivering on our policy position paper. As a result of that, we signed up then to the UNFCCC Sports for Climate Action. I don't know how many others have done this as well, but this was a pivotal point for us within ENOS. And within that, there are a number of key principles, but two of them relate to how we monitor, measure, and then reduce our global emissions. So it undertakes systematic efforts to promote greater environmental responsibility and reduce our overall climate impact. Well, you can't really reduce your climate impact if you don't know what it is. So in 2022, we started also measuring our emissions and our climate impact. At the same time, we were also having a project which was on sustainability and environmental education in outdoor sports. Now, this project was focused on helping outdoor sports organizations and federations to train leaders in ways that were more tuned into the natural environment. Outdoor sports leaders tend to be really good at risk management, at group control, at organizing activities, imparting key information. But what we were finding was they were less good at informing their participants about the the issues that we can have in terms of impacts on our environment. And as we were doing this project, we were coming together regularly as teams to meet from all across Europe, and we realized we can't just focus on our impacts on the local nature, but we need to think about our impacts on a global basis as well. And this is where we started measuring our carbon footprint of our mobility for our meetings within this project. And we've been doing it with all of our other projects since. So what we did was we created an Excel spreadsheet, and this is the front page of the spreadsheet. You can access this spreadsheet. The link is there, and we'll make it available afterwards. You can download it and use it yourself, modify it, change it if you want. And within the spreadsheet, this is like the front page that tells you how to go about the process. And then the next page starts to give you the details. So every time you do an event, we take the details of who attended, where they came from, and where they're traveling to, and then any distances they traveled by air, by car, by train, by bus, and also the number of people in the car. So if there was 4 people in the car, you take that into account as well. So this started measuring our carbon footprint. You can see here we also put a cost against this so that we would know if we were to offset this, what the cost would be. And we did actually offset all of our costs for 2022 and are now working on the 2023 results. So this is how we kind of measure the information. And just to give an example of that, in 2022, we held our biennial Euromeet. It's our big event where we bring together our network members plus many other people to share ideas, share knowledge at a conference. It's a very different style of conference. It's very practical, and there's lots of participation and interaction. But we measured the impact of the journeys of all the participants to the conference. There's about 150 people came from all across Europe to the conference. And you can see just for this event that what the different sectors generated. So people flying, we held it in Silkeborg in Denmark, people flying to Denmark accounted for 35,000 kilograms, 35 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent gases and greenhouse emissions just from the flights alone. And if you look at trains and cars, it was significantly lower than that in terms of those who came by trains and cars. So this starts to really put a picture together for people in terms of the impacts. Another project that we've had is the Beyond Horizons project. It's a youth engagement project. And again, one of our meetings was actually in Sweden, and we put together the data for this. And what we did on this one was we started to look at the distance traveled and the amount of carbon that was generated. And if you look at this one, what is interesting is that almost as many people traveled the same distances by train as came by air. So we had 23,500 kilometers were traveled by individuals on trains, and 21,000, nearly 22,000 kilometers traveled by flight. The train journeys accounted for 966 kilograms of carbon, whereas the flights accounted for 5,500 kilograms of carbon. And what this has really done within our network is it started to get people thinking and started to change perceptions of how we travel and encouraging people to travel using surface methods as opposed to flying. What we're saying is we don't rule out flying. We don't give anybody a hard time if they have to fly, but we try and it really has changed people's perception in terms of making this journey in different ways. So just to give an example of that, I live at the end of this little line in Northern Ireland, and we had an exchange program in the south of France. And so about 6 of us came by minibus down to Dublin, and then we got the ferry to Cherbourg, and then we drove down the whole way through France in a shared minibus to get to the event. Although what can happen is that often with surface travel, things can go wrong. And we've often found this in many of our journeys and many of our exchanges now, is that the people who end up traveling by surface often have these incredible adventures. So we arrived back to Cherbourg to get our ferry back to Ireland, and it had been cancelled. And so we were stuck in Cherbourg. We then took another 2 days to have to drive up to Calais. Then we got a ferry across to England, and then we got the ferry from England or for we drove up through England and then went to Wales and got a ferry back to Dublin from Wales. So it suddenly became this big adventure, and so it is challenging. One of the other challenges that we've found is it's really cheap to fly. So there's currently no taxes on airline fuels. So that's why flights are so cheap, whereas surface transport is much more expensive. Yes, it takes more time, but our argument has always been you can work on trains and ferries. It's much harder to work on flights and airlines. But you know, it's to get that change in perception is really difficult. But not only the change in perception, but also how can we work collaboratively as a sector to encourage the European Commission and encourage others to make our transport networks as economical as flying, particularly over in the last sort of number of years where flying has become really, really cheap to do. So one of the things we've been saying for years is that we are encouraging people to make the journey to the adventure part of the adventure. We're into adventurous activities, adventure sports, and the journey can actually create really nice stories and encourage people to have a lot of fun together. And instead of being the first thing that we do to book a flight or to jump in your car, it's actually looking at, you know, what can we do to reduce our impacts and only do those things as a last resort? Can we use public transport? Can we go by surface transport? And then if it's not really viable, then we look to book a flight. So just to finish with, I'm just going to show you what can happen and the fun that people can have on their journeys. So guys, that's it from me. A very short and sweet point, but it's really just to get the message across. Measure your impacts and then also use that to change attitudes and perceptions.
Thank you so much, Mike. But just a short follow-up question of that, to that. I mean, have you seen that you actually, you know, have reduced your carbon footprint from these events?
Yeah,
by having that motto, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a sea change in terms of attitudes of people traveling. One of the challenges is we're a growing network, so we're growing and expanding and doing more things. So we have more activities, and that would make it seem that we're creating more carbon when you have more activities. But the impact of each activity is reducing from what it was at the start of our exchanges and our network meetings. So yes, we are seeing a change, but it is slow and it's challenging. I was in France earlier this year and I got the ferry to Cherbourg and got the train to France. But to get home, I just didn't have time to come by trains back and ferries back. So I took a flight home. And sometimes that's, you don't have an option. You just have to take the quicker option. So.
Thank you so much. And please, we have time for one more question to Mike. So if you have one, please drop one in the chat. And while you do so, then I'll ask another question. Is that it's actually, I mean, because you calculate this emissions on, you know, carbon per kilometer, but how did you agree on those kind of proxies for that amount?
Yeah, I thought this question would probably happen. So, yeah, this is a really interesting point. We did quite a lot of research to find out, you know, what the proxies should be, and there are some standardized ones. So the UNFCCC have some. The European Environment Agency had a set, and that's the ones that we adopted were the ones developed by the European Environment Agency. And also then in terms of calculating the carbon offsetting costs, we did that using Atmosphere, which is the organization that the European Environment Agency uses as well. And they had standardized costs per kilogram of carbon to offset. Just in terms of offsetting, because I think it's a really interesting one, we're also really focused on the issue of biodiversity crisis. We don't think that a climate crisis is the only crisis. The biodiversity crisis is completely linked to the climate crisis. And so we have been offsetting all our carbon by investing in nature restoration projects. We have carbon credits. We've adopted 2 really strong nature restoration projects in Europe, one a marine-based one for seagrass, and also one in the mountains of Carpathia, a rewilding project. And I think we believe this is really important, not just to measure, but then to do something about it. Yes, to change your attitude, but to reinvest in nature restoration.
Thank you. Very interesting. And I'll say thank you to you, Mike, but still hang in there because we're getting towards the end of this interesting webinar. And now I have, just to conclude the presentations and the discussions we had today, we have a few minutes left. So I have a few questions, which is targeted to all of you who has presented today. So I really want to have some sort of response from Peter, Anders, Sarah and Johanna and Mike regarding these questions, because we've heard a lot of good examples and also challenges at hand. So my questions are, I have a few questions related to the future and the continuation of the work that you already have been initiating and come quite a bit in. So I think that the first of all, it's like we see that these different levels kind of interact with terms of, you know, we have the policy level where certain changes would be preferable, but we also have the individual level where we need to change our behavior, the individual behavior. And then we have all of these associations and organizations in between. So I would really like to hear your perspective on, okay, but what are the most important things we can do and actions we can take with regards to policy and the organizational level or the organization that you represent. But I also want to hear actually what mode of transportation will you use for your next sport or outdoor activity? So please a reflection of these three levels and how you would want to proceed in the future. And Mike, you're first on in my window. So would you like to start?
Well, maybe I'll start with the policy piece and the advocacy piece. We've had a lot of discussion with the guys from the UNFCCC in terms of, you know, what we can realistically do, because we're a relatively small organization. I mean, we've measured our carbon impact, but it's not that high in the global scheme of things. However, so what should our policies be in terms of trying to do something about that? And I think their view and ours is that sport can be a really strong advocate for this, and we can reach people that the environmental sector maybe is not able to reach. So one of the things we need to do is be really strong advocates within our own sectors, within our members, and to encourage them to be advocates to their families and friends about how they travel, behave in more sustainable manners. So I think our role very much is one of strong advocacy and promotion of these topics.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Johanna to give her share your reflections with us.
Yeah, I would probably follow up on what Mike just said, because I also think, I mean, we're a rather big association, yes, but still we have like broken down to every member, we have 35 kilos of CO2 emissions per year per member, which is not so much. But still, we have the opportunity to educate people, because that's what we do on like a regular basis. We have all those courses for mountaineering and so on, and we are also very like established in this nature conservation part as well. So yeah, we're trying to increase also our engagement with politics and to try and be a bit more active in this direction, as we are on the nature conservation side already, but not on the climate perspective. So I think I see like our position in the future being a role model and being a playground to experience all this behavior change in a like secure environment, and with people who actually know or who are maybe like a step further, and who can like show you, okay, that's how it's going and that's how it works. yeah. And maybe to your second question, I will go by bike and by train. So my next trip is a bikepacking trip, and I really hope I get back by train well. So let's see.
Fingers crossed. That sounds good. Yeah, Anders. Let's see if you're
so
now.
no. Yes. Well, from a sort of research point of view, I think it's there's a lack of research on the combination of mobility and outdoor sports and recreation. Most research is focused on urban areas, on everyday trips to work, to other types of leisures. So how many parks there are in Barcelona? There are 50 papers on that, and access to parks. So I think this is from a research perspective, it's a very it's really open to a lot of new sort of studies. There are a lot of different opportunities, I think, and it's really interesting to hear the concrete work from Sara and Johanna, who are actually out there on the factory floor, so to speak, and it would, from my perspective, would be really sort of interesting to see if you could, maybe through ENOS, to do some sort of combined conference kind of thing where you can have practical examples and practical work joining the limited research there actually is at this point. So I've learned today that there are things are done, and people like to measure. That's what I've learned as well. I'm not as convinced that measuring is the only answer, but obviously if you don't know, it's hard to see in what direction you go. And for the second question, well, I'm in Brussels at the moment, so I'm taking the metro tomorrow to orienteering training. So that's my next outdoor experience.
Sounds good. Thank you for these reflections. Thank you very much. Sara.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I think on the policy side, there are definitely a lot of things that need to be done on the policy side. Just from like a Swedish point of view, we are working definitely with policy issues as well, and mainly policy issues linked to sustainable travel. And from our side, what we really need to see for tourists to make it easier for tourists to travel by public transport, it should be easier to book tickets. For instance, for people that travel to our accommodations, they travel with different modes of transport. They pass different regions or different municipalities and different counties, and they often have different ticket systems. So that's one thing, just to make it easier with one ticket system throughout the country. And also to release tickets earlier. I mean, often with the popular accommodations, people book them maybe a year ahead, but sometimes they can only book the train ticket 1 week ahead because there's a lot of maintenance of the trails and so on. So it's also like the Swedish Transport Administration really needs to plan their maintenance of the tracks in a better way, so they can release the tickets way ahead. And also not only plan public transport for commuting to school and commuting to work, because we know that the number of people who are traveling on their free time, on their spare time, has increased, and also the interest for traveling with public transport in a climate-friendly way has increased. So society should really like plan public transport for these people as well. And on what we can do, I think it's more what I'm hearing from, for instance, the Swedish Transport Administration and other important actors, is that it's sometimes difficult when the outdoor recreations organizations are not speaking with one voice. So I think we really just networking and also discussing which policy issues should we really try to push policy within would be one of those things to really pick up this need for more networking. And that's something that we're trying to do with this Kebnekaise network. And also be a model. I think we are quite a big organization, and I think my vision is that the guests would also see themselves as part of the sustainability journey. So not only arriving to accommodation where you have it's a sustainable accommodation, but also that you're, as a tourist or as a guest, you're a part of this journey, and your travel, the way you travel to this accommodation, is a part of this sustainability journey. And on the next adventure to a nature reserve or something like that, I think I will either car share or take the bus, because I don't own a car. So then it's easier to travel sustainably.
Yes. Definitely. Thank you so much for this, Sarah. And I think the networking part, Mike has a concluding, he will come back. But before I give the word to Mike, I wonder if we still have Peter with us, and if you would kindly reflect also.
Yes, Peter's still here. He even put the camera back on. So hi.
Hi.
I thought you saw me. No, okay. Very, very interesting discussions. Good examples, some of which I take back to my work and think about maybe coming back to one or the other speaker. In terms of takeaways or what to work on next, prioritize, I think linked to today's topic, I think urban planning and thinking of making it easier for citizens to be physically active in urban spaces is really important. Think also what the new European Bauhaus has to say about this. And so I think linking the need for outdoor sports or making it attractive to have outdoor sports possibilities. It can also be a factor to attract and retain citizens. I think that's some of the messages that I would like to get across in case we are successful with the application to the European Week of Regions and Cities workshop. The other issue I'll focus on, because that's not mobility related, but it's the second biggest CO2 emitting factor in sports, that is the maintenance and management of existing sports infrastructure. So what energy is being used, how's the water managed, etc. So that's the whole big area that I think we need to put on the table, and also see that more of available EU funding goes into this investment. Lots of the sport infrastructure is outdated, decades old, and is in need of modernization. And there are funds for that also at EU level, but somehow sports facilities, I'm not talking big stadia, but thousands and thousands of grassroots sports facilities are not really benefiting yet. I think that's also something to look at. And my next trip will be a local one on a rental bike scheme here in Eastern Poland, in Białystok, where I am today. I'll go for dinner. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter. So I will hand the word to Mike.
Thanks again, Karen, and thank you for hosting this event so well. It's been really good. I've been really inspired by what I've heard today. And there are some really good innovations that we've been hearing about. We just wanted to share what we're doing next, and that's our next big event, which is the Outdoor Sports Euromeet. It's happening in Lecco in Italy. It's actually remarkably easy to get to by public transport. There's a great train network that runs to Milan, and then from Milan to Lecco, it's really easy to get the train. It's super cheap as well. So trains in Italy are really inexpensive. So we'd really encourage folk to think about booking and coming along to our Euromeet conference. We've the overall theme is about outdoor sports innovations, inspiring sustainable and active citizens. And within that, we have 3 key things, which is about inactivity, about well-being inequalities, but also about how we can be innovative to tackle climate change and environmental issues within the outdoor sports sector. And that's going to be a big part of what we're going to be discussing at the Euromeet. As I mentioned, it's an event where we do have speakers, but we actually have a lot of participatory workshops where we get to share ideas and come up with solutions jointly and commitments that we work on together going forward. It's also a great opportunity to network and to build relationships with people from other sectors. So if you're purely from the sports sector here, you'll get the chance to meet the people from regional and local authorities, health and well-being, universities. And then if you're thinking about pan-European projects, that gives you real breadth whenever you're looking for project partners. So we'd really encourage you to come along. We have also been talking about whether, you know, we have an extra day at the Euromeet where we take the conversation about mobility a little bit further. And so, you know, we'll have some more discussions with the MISTRA Sport and Outdoor group and with our sustainability group. And it's great that you have all signed up to this, because we'll then share some thoughts on what those next steps might be. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that as well, Karen.
No, I mean, I think it's a great initiative, and we will keep on up the dialogue, and we're definitely there. We definitely want to network. We definitely want to learn, and yeah, just get better, actually. So we're happy to go, and looking forward to meeting you there as well. Okay, thank you everybody for being here. And I think we had great presentations, very interesting topics. We learned a lot. And with that, I want to say thank you and looking forward to see you next time. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.